I never thought my last day of high school would haunt me forever. It was June 10th, 2024. The corridors of St. Alora's High were buzzing with students, signing yearbooks, snapping selfies, and hugging their favorite teachers goodbye. She'd have been celebrating like everyone else. But something about that day felt off. A kind of heaviness clung to the air. Like the building itself didn't want us to leave. Our school was over 100 years old and aging structure of red bricks and whispering halls. It had a strange history too. Fires, suicides, a student gone missing in the 90s. Stuff you joked about on Halloween. Stuff you joked about. That day, I remember I had left my phone in my locker number 237 on the 3rd floor. After the final assembly, as the building emptied and students poured out into summer, I ran back upstairs. The 3rd floor was oddly quiet. No chatter, no footsteps, just rows of lockers and the soft hum of flickering fluorescent lights. Past Ms. Darnell's old classroom room 308. The door was ajar. She'd been gone since October, fired for reasons the school never disclosed. Some said she was caught with a Ouija board. Others said she spoke to someone who wasn't there. As I opened my locker, I heard it a whisper, not a hallway echo. A real whisper, right next to my ear. Don't leave. I spun around. No one, not a soul in sight, just cold air that made my skin pebble. I grabbed my phone, slammed the locker, can turned to run only, to find the hallway behind me had changed. It wasn't empty anymore. There, at the far end, stood a group of 5 students. But something was wrong. They weren't moving, weren't talking, staring, frozen. I couldn't see their faces clearly. Like fog blurred them. I blinked, then they vanished. Asterisk, I didn't tell anyone what I saw. I figured I was just tired. My mind playing tricks. That night, I dreamt of the school, the empty halls, that strange group. In my dream, they surrounded me and whispered in chorus, "You were supposed to stay." The next morning, I got a text from Kara, my best friend since kindergarten. Greater than "Did you leave your hoodie in 308? I saw it on the chair. So weird. BC, you haven't had class there since Feb. Hadn't been in room 308 since January. I didn't leave anything there. Yet the text chilled me. I tried to ignore it until around 4 p.m. When curiosity got the better of me, I borrowed my brother's bike and headed back to the school. Atissa's summer break meant it was supposed to be locked up, but the back gym door was ajar slightly. Inside, everything was still, unnaturally still, like the whole place was asleep. I crept up the stairwell to the 3rd floor, heart thudding in my chest. As I reached room 308, the door opened by itself, and there it was, my hoodie, folded neatly on the teacher's desk. But I didn't go in, because someone was already in the room, facing the chalkboard. A woman stood barefoot in a faded floral dress. Her gray-streaked hair was disheveled, hanging over her face. Tased, hung limp by her sides. She wasn't moving. Then she whispered, "They don't let go." I ran. I swear I felt hands reaching out from the lockers, grabbing at my shirt and jeans as I bolted down the hall. I didn't stop running until I was halfway down the block from the school. I never told Kara. I never told anyone. But that night, around 2:11 a.m., I got a voicemail. It was from my number. When I played it, I heard myself screaming, and in the background those same 5 whispering voices. "You were the last. Now you belong here." Asterisk, I tried to move on. Keen, tried to convince myself that I was imagining it. Stress, nostalgia, grief over leaving childhood behind, whatever. But Then the others started disappearing, not all at once, okay? Just one by one. First it was Marcus, then Anya, then the twins, Jared and Jess, all from the graduating class. All last seen near or inside the school. Their lockers, all in the 200th section. I went online, digging through school forums and archives. I found an old post from a student in 1996 who wrote about the Watchers. A group of students who supposedly died in a fire in the 1920s during a detention session. Locked in overnight, the building caught fire. 5 students burned alive. Their bodies were never found, only ashes. Their lockers, all in the 230s. And guess what? 237 had belonged to one of them. A boy named Eli Cross. I even found an old yearbook photo. Same dead eyes. Same blank stare I saw that day in the hallway. I think when I used that locker when I opened it on my last die became a part of something I wasn't meant to. A doorway, a tether. Now I don't sleep. The whispers come through vents, through outlets, even through my dreams. And tonight is the anniversary of that fire. I woke up to find 5 figures standing at the foot of my bed. They don't move. They don't blink, but I can feel it. They're waiting for me to return to the school, for me to take my place, because I was the last dot, and the last never gets to leave. Asterisk. My last day of high school should have been unforgettable for all the right reasons. Instead, it's unforgettable for the worst. June 14th, 2024. I remember the weather exactly gray. Heavy clouds, almost like the sky itself was pressing down. Everyone was in a good mood regardless. Seniors were skipping class. Yearbooks were getting passed around. Someone even brought in cupcakes and fake champagne to celebrate freedom. It was 4th period when everything went wrong. Our regular homeroom teacher, Mr. Flannery, was out sick, so the school sent in a substitute. When she walked in, the class went dead silent. Not because we were being respectful. We were never respectful. Because something about her felt ... wrong. She was tall, too tall. Like her limbs stretched just a bit longer than human anatomy should allow. Her face was pale and tight, like stretched wax. She wore a black blazer over a dress that looked 20 years out of fashion. Her smile was razor thin, and her eyes didn't blink. Not once. She walked to the board and wrote her name in scratchy, slanted letters. Ms. Vendra. No one had heard of her before. No introduction, no attendance sheet. She didn't take roll. She just turned to the class and said, "Greater than let's begin where we left off." None of us said anything. It was homeroom, there was no beginning or lesson. But we played along. Part curiosity, part fear. Something about her demanded silence. She handed each of us a thin booklet. The pages were yellowed and filled with symbols, not letters, almost like runes. The more I looked at them, the more they seemed to ... move, twist and curl. "You will read aloud when called," she said. "If you read well, you leave. If not, you stay." We laughed, nervously, but something about her tone made my stomach drop, like she wasn't joking. That's when Adam the class clown read first. He rolled his eyes, cracked a joke, and read one of the lines out loud, and then he screamed. Asterisk, Adam didn't just scream, he collapsed, his eyes rolling back, body convulsing like he was being electrocuted. His mouth hung open, but no sound came out after that first blood-curdling shriek. It's just silence. Stillness. Ms. Vendra didn't flinch. She walked over to him, gently placed a hand on his chest, and said calmly, "Failed." Then she pointed to the door. It opened at Du Bois Noah, and Brett sprinted out without hesitation. But just as they reached the hallway, the door slammed shut and didn't reopen. We heard no screams, no running, just silence. Then Ms. Vendra smiled, greater than anyone else, wished to fail. Swear I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't work. My hands were ice cold, and my mind was screaming, "Wake up." But this wasn't a dream. She called the next name Sarah. Sarah tried to read the line, but she started to cry before the words left her mouth. The symbols on the page looked darker now, almost wet, as if ink was still bleeding from them. She dropped the booklet, but Miss Vendra was already beside her, long fingers brushing Sarah's shoulder. "Greater than you are chosen. You stay. It's time." The lights flickered. A hum grew loud in the walls, like a swarm of flies behind the plaster. Sarah's eyes went wide, and her voice cracked. "Greater than I never signed up for this." Miss Vendra only tilted her head. "Greater than you graduated, dear. That means the deal is done." Sarah's body jerked upward, like an invisible string had yanked her toward the ceiling. Her feet left the floor 5-10 inches in, then she vanished. Gone. Just gone. Asterisk by now. The rest of us, me, Kayla, Jordan, Reese, were backed into the corners of the room, whispering prayers, trying not to make eye contact with her. Temperature had dropped at least 20 degrees. Our breath came out in mist. Reese whispered, "She's not human." I whispered back, "She's not even alive." Ms. Vendra turned and stared right at me. "Your turn, Michael." I looked down at my booklet. The symbols had changed. They weren't runes anymore, they were names. Names of every student in the class. But next to half of them were black, bleeding X marks, and my name was glowing. I shook my head, stood slowly, and backed toward the window. I was on the second floor. If I jumped, I might break something, but at least I'd be out of that room. But before I could even move, the shadows in the corners stretched long and needle-like. My legs. They held me in place as she glided forward. The way a spider creeps across its web. She leaned in close and whispered, "Greater than the last day of school is the ritual. When you cross from student to soul, we collect those who forget the price of passage." Screamed. I fought. I begged. But her hand was already on my forehead, and then everything stopped. When I woke up, I was outside, lying in the grass in front of the school. Sirens in the distance. Parents crying. Teachers shouting. They said there was a gas leak, that 4 students were found unconscious. 2 were missing. No one spoke of Ms. Vendra. There were no records, no security footage, no mention of her name anywhere in school files. But I know what happened, and the others do too. We don't talk about it. We meet once a year, the survivors. Just 4 of us now, because every June 14th, one of us goes missing, and I know. One day, I'll be the last, the final graduate, and when that day comes, she'll come back to finish the lesson. It was June 6, 2020 for my last official day of high school. You'd think I'd be excited. Everyone else was. The seniors were planning a party at the lake, and most people didn't even bother showing up for the final half of the day. But I stayed, not because I was sentimental, but because I had one thing left to do. See, every locker in our school was assigned alphabetically. But for some reason, I was placed in a different hall, the East Wing basement, near the old AV room. Number 1 used that hallway anymore. It always smelled like mold and metal, and the lights flickered like in a bad horror movie. My friends called it the morgue. My locker was number 4107. I was told it was a mistake in the system, but since I was already using it, they let it be. On the last day, I went back one last time to clean it out, but when I got there, it was already open. The combination lock was on the floor, snapped in half like someone crushed it, and inside was a folded sheet of paper I'd never seen before. No books, no jacket, just the note, yellowed like it had been there for years. It read, "Welcome back. You're right on time." I thought it was a prank. Maybe one of the janitors messing with me, till I noticed something else. The handwriting on the note matched mine, but I never wrote it. Asterisk. I backed away from the locker, heart racing. I could feel that crawling tension behind my neck. It's a kind of fear that makes your ears ring and your feet cold. The hallway was dead silent. That's when the lights above me started to buzz. One by one, they blinked out thump, thump, thump until the entire hall went pitch black. My phone was upstairs in my bag. Typical. I used my hands to feel my way to the stairwell, but the stairwell door wouldn't open, no matter how hard I shoved. And then I heard it calling, footsteps, not mine, someone else's, slow, barefoot, slapping wet against the floor. They echoed down the hallway. Behind me, I pressed my ear to the stairwell door and heard something click on the other side. A voice, faint, like it was coming through a tunnel. Greater than, "You opened it again." I turned and bolted the other way, deeper into the basement. Stupid, I know, but I was panicking. I passed the old AV room, then a row of janitor closets, all locked until I found one that wasn't. I slipped inside and closed the door, its heart pounding, breathing like I'd run a marathon. Their room was pitch black, except for a tiny glass window in the top corner. That's when I saw it. A shape, human-sized, but hunched, crawling. Fast it moved past the glass, stopped, and turned its head. But there were no features. Just a face stretched smooth, like melted wax. It pressed a hand against the glass. 5 long fingers. Long nails. I didn't breathe. Then it whispered through the door, directly into my ear. "Last day means last chance." Asterisk. I don't remember falling asleep, but I must have blacked out in that closet. When I woke up, everything was different. Dim sunlight filtered through the tiny window. The school was silent again, but not peaceful wrong. Ty opened the door and stepped out. There were no posters on the walls anymore. No lockers, no vending machines. The paint was peeling like dead skin. It looked like the school had been abandoned for decades. But what made my blood freeze were the pictures down the hallway. Taped to the walls were black and white class photos, but not normal ones. These were of students standing rigidly, faces blank, all wearing the same clothes, dark uniforms with no logos, dozens of them. Some even looked familiar. Then I saw mine, my photo, front and center. But it wasn't the me from last week. It was a version of me that looked older, hollow-eyed, dead-eyed. And beneath the photo, a line of handwritten text, greater than class of 4107, eternally enrolled. I ran again, desperate to find a way out. Every door was bricked shut, every exit gone. I returned to the stairwell, praying it had changed. It had. It was open. I sprinted up, tripping over steps. When I reached the main floor, everything snapped back. Color, sound, light, and students. Real students. I stood in the hallway, like a ghost. No one noticed I was missing. No one even acknowledged that I had been gone for what felt like hours. I looked back toward the east wing. There was no hallway anymore. No locker for 107. Just a concrete wall. I don't talk about it. People wouldn't believe me anyway. But sometimes, late at night, I hear scratching from my bedroom closet. And last week, I found another note in my sock drawer. It said, "There's still time to come back. We're saving your place." And worst of all, the handwriting was still mine. Most students don't return after the final bell rings on the last day of school. But I did. Not because I wanted to. Trust me. I didn't. But I was part of the student council cleanup crew. We had to finalize inventory, clear out decorations, and report any damage. Pretty boring stuff. There were 4 of us left, that me, Daniel, Madison, Leo, and Priya. By 6:30 p.m., we were the only ones still in the building. Admin had already left. Even the janitor was nowhere to be found. The hallways felt eerie without the usual noise. Still, we had one last task left on our checklist: inspect room to be. Now here's the thing. Room to be hadn't been used in years. It was part of the old wing that had been shut down after a fire. Broke out during an electrical experiment in 2017. Rumor had it a student died during the incident, but no one ever confirmed it. It didn't even appear on the official building map anymore. "Let's just mark it as inaccessible and bounce," Madison said. But Leo, always the curious idiot, insisted on checking it out. "Come on, it's our last day. Might as well leave with a story. Should have left it alone." We found the door buried behind a rusted metal bookshelf and a heavy curtain near the end of the science wing. The handle was ice cold, like a freezer door. Leo twisted it open. Inside was darkness. Thick, stale air hit us immediately like rotting wood and burnt plastic. The room hadn't been touched in years. Desks were stacked in strange angles, and the chalkboard had a single message written across it: "Do not wake him." Madison snapped a photo. Then the lights flickered on by themselves, and the door slammed shut behind us. Asterisk at first. Lee laughed it off. "Nervous," said shaky laughter. Then Priya tried to open the door. It didn't budge. "Okay, not funny," she said, yanking harder. Leo checked the light switch. Tia wasn't connected to anything. It looked melted at the base. Kada. That's when Madison noticed something on the teacher's desk. A small chalk figure, maybe 6 inches tall, crudely made, but it had a drawn-in face, a circle for a mouth that looked like it was screaming. Leo picked it up and immediately dropped it. "It's warm," he said. That was impossible. Madison reached for it, tanned, the second her fingers brushed it. The lights went out again, total black. Then, from the back of the room, thing not human, breathing not human, breathing wet, heavy, rattling, like someone was struggling to inhale through water. A desk scraped across the floor. Another one tipped over. Madison whispered, "What the hell is that?" Leo lit his phone flashlight and swept it around until it landed on the back corner. There was someone standing there, something. A tall, skinless figure, bone-white and hunched, its arms too long, its fingertips dragging along the ground. Its mouth was open, and it looked like it had been sewn shut with rusted wires. Tease's eyes were sunken pits. The chalkboard behind it now read, "He is awake." I nearly passed out. Then it moved. Asterisk, we screamed. Leo threw the chalk doll at it, and for a split second, the lights flashed, and the figure recoiled. Keela like it was made of shadow and was ripping apart in strobe light. Priya grabbed a desk. "Keela, chair," and smashed the nearest window, but there was no outside. Just brick dot behind us. The creature was crawling, now impossibly fast, slithering and cracking its joints backward with each lurch. It let out a sound like 100 voices crying at once. Madison clutched her phone, trembling. "There's something in my photo. Look." She showed us the pic she took earlier of the chalkboard. But in the reflection we were all standing. In the classroom, with a fifth person behind us. Someone that wasn't there, wearing a scorched school uniform, holding a melted chalk doll in one hand. I suddenly remembered the rumor. The student who supposedly died in the 2017 fire. His name was Jeremy Knox. I'd seen his name etched into a scorched textbook when I was a freshman. This was his room, I whispered. Then Leo said the worst thing anyone could have said. He never graduated. At the moment those words left his mouth, the figure lunged toward him. We didn't have time to stop it. Leo screamed as it grabbed his chest and pulled into him, like merging. His eyes went white. He collapsed. The chalkboard updated itself again. Greater than 3 remain. Finish the year. Let him walk free. Madison panicked. She threw the chalk doll into the desk drawer and slammed it shut. The lights burst on and the door creaked open. We ran. We didn't stop until we reached the parking lot. Leo was never found. His name was quietly removed from school records, as if he never enrolled. His parents stopped showing up at meetings. It was like he'd been erased. A few weeks later, I found something strange in my mailbox at home, a sealed manila envelope. Inside was a single piece of chalk dot and a note in Leo's handwriting. Greater than he still needs one more day. You never forget your last day of high school. For most people, it's full of laughter, scribbled yearbooks, and awkward group selfies. For me, it was a nightmare I can't wake up from. The day started normal. I was sitting in Mr. Keller's homeroom, zoning out while people tossed paper planes across the room. Everyone was too hyped to care about attendance or rules. Summer was calling. College was weeks away. At exactly 12 p.m., the final bell rang. Everyone erupted in cheers. The people threw their binders in the trash like it was graduation. Some kids even bolted out the front door right then, so I lingered behind to help clean up our senior prank. We'd filled the main hallway with hundreds of balloons. Just as I was popping the last few balloons, something strange happened. The bell rang again, but this time it was off. The sound was distorted, slower, wet, like it was echoing through water. I looked around. The halls were empty, dead empty. No janitors, no friends, no teachers. Just that faint smell like something had burned a week ago and nobody cleaned it up. I pulled out my phone. No service. I told myself to leave, to run. But something in me said, go to the auditorium. The lights in the main hallway flickered as I walked. The sun outside had vanished behind thick storm clouds. It was only early afternoon, but it felt like twilight. I passed my locker and stopped. It was wide open. Inside was a folded black graduation robe, but I had never picked mine up. Worse, tucked into the robe was a tarnished name tag. My name, carved into bronze, not printed. It looked old, rusted at the corners, like it had been buried. Chills crept down my spine. I left the robe and headed to the auditorium, still trying to rationalize everything. Maybe it was some elaborate senior prank. Maybe I was on TikTok live right now, about to be roasted. But when I reached the double doors, something else stopped me. Voices, soft, echoing voices behind the doors. Familiar, but wrong, repeating the same thing again and again. Greater than. You forgot your final test. You forgot your final test. You forgot your final. I opened the door, and the auditorium was full. Every seat was taken by students in black robes, but their faces weren't right. Some had hollow eyes, theirs had no mouths. A T looked like melted wax. Statues of people I used to know, students who transferred, or went missing, or died. On stage, a single desk stood, with a test paper placed neatly on it. The lights snapped on overhead, and one of the robed figures stood and pointed at me. Daniel Graves. Take your seat. Asterisk, I don't remember walking to the stage. My legs moved on their own, sat at the desk, staring at the test paper. The title read, Final Assessment, Life and Death. Only one question, greater than why do you think you're still here? I looked out at the crowd. Some of those robed figures were familiar. I saw Jenny Moore, who died in freshman year in that car crash. Tariq Simmons, who vanished after second semester sophomore year. Even Mr. Keller, our homeroom teacher, was sitting there, pale and silent. They were all gone, yet they were all staring at me. Then I realized the desk I sat in had scratches on it. It's like someone had carved letters into it. I looked closer. I failed. Don't write the answer. 'Twas signed A.L. Anthony Lewis, my classmate who died by suicide 2 years ago. I dropped the pen. My heart was racing. A voice echoed from above. Greater than write it, and you stay. Refuse, and you go. Everything clicked. This wasn't a school anymore. 'Twas something else wearing our school's skin. Someplace between here and whatever's next. I stood up and said, trembling, I don't belong here. The crowd screamed in one voice, a horrible chorus of disappointment. The lights exploded. The auditorium burned with white light, and then silence. I woke up on the gym floor, surrounded by balloons. It was 12:01 p.m. My phone buzzed. Service returned. Everything was normal, but when I checked my bag, that bronze name tag was inside, and, worse, every mirror since that day shows a faint row of figures behind me, still watching, still waiting. I didn't take the test, but they still know my name.